Today we're going to talk about SCSI, or Small Computer System Interface, and I have a couple cards here for demonstration purposes, including the one that will be installed in my Mac, but my cat's going to have to make sure to keep away because they are static sensitive cards. So let me go through very quickly and show you the equipment as we have it. These come from different eras and different ages, so not all of these cards are new. So let's get started. Actually, none of these cards are new. Let's start with the oldest of the cards. No, that's the next oldest. Let's go to the very oldest card here. This is a SCSI 1 card, and you will see it is an Adaptec card. It is an Adaptec, let's see, let me make sure you get the right card here, AHA 1522. This is a SCSI 1 card. It also has a floppy drive connector on it as well. You can see that on the top here. Zoom in on this here. Got your wide. You can see the difference in connectors. The floppy is narrow and the card is wide. This was made before the modern systems we have today, and I will discuss the hardware in this card as we go. Right now, let me first of all point out to you that this is a SCSI 1 card with a maximum transfer rate of 5 megabytes per second. This is a single-ended card. It has an ISA 16-bit bus. It appears it actually could be used probably in an 8-bit host adapter or a computer, as long as you set the IRQ to one of the lower ones below 10. And so right now by default it's set for 10. And IP and the SCSI address is 0300. It's in hex. These cards here use passive termination. To terminate these cards, you have to you install these resistor packs here. You'll see there's 3 of them. One here. There you go. One here and one here. When you're ready to, if you're going to use this card as the main in the middle, you have to take the terminators out of these cards. A lot of people, unfortunately, used to really bungle them pretty bad, so it always was usually used either as the end or either externally or internally. This has a Centronic 50 connector on it, and I happen to have a matching cable. I will show you that in a little bit. So that's an ISA card. By the way, all these cards, the rest of these cards are all PCI. Only 2 of them support 3.3 volts. This is one of the one. This is the newest one. This is an Adaptec APA 2940 U2B card for the Macintosh. And this, you can see it, is an Ultra 2 wide SCSI single channel host adapter. There we go. And this is the Y2 SCSI host adapter. Unlike the older cards, this does not use actual resistor packs that you pull in and pull out. This instead uses a software switch in firmware to enable and disable the termination, which is actually an active termination. We'll talk about the active termination in a little bit. Right now, this is the newest card that we're going to be putting into the Mac for that reason. I'm going to put it back in the pouch until I can get over to the Mac and set it up. Hopefully we can get a working demonstration of the scanner. This is a SCSI 2 fast card. Again, these are all PC cards. This is a PCI card. This supports only 5 volt PCI. This will not work on the Power Mac G5 because this card, first of all, has Intel firmware for PC, and it only has the 5 volt PCI connector. You'll notice that there's no second notch over here. That's essential for it to be supported for 3.3 volt operation. It has a standard 50-pin IDC connector on the top here, and it has a 50-pin SCSI 2 connector right over here on the side. Unfortunately, it is also not labeled, but that's basically what it is. This next card is really probably the most exciting card of all. If I could find the firmware to work it with a Macintosh, I definitely would do it. This is a SCSI Logic SymBIOS SYM 22910. Originally when I got this card, it was set for something called an Intergraph. Right here you can see it says Intergraph on it. There you go. And so I reflashed it to work with Intel processors. So now this is all set for the Intel processor application. And this works fine. This is also a 3.3 volt PCI compliant card. It also is a 64-bit card, PCI card. This can also be used in a 32-bit PCI slot, and it works fine. In fact, this works fine with Linux, both Debian and Slackware. I actually kind of like this card. It's kind of cool. It's dual channel, which means you can mix different topologies, and you have two different channels to do that. Now, we didn't mention terminators, and I need to explain that SCSI comes in two flavors. You have your passive terminator and your active terminator. All modern SCSI hardware uses active terminators, especially if you're using low voltage differential. Because there's 3 SCSI standards. I'm going to go through them real quick. 2 which work good together. The third is completely its own, and might say after SCSI 2 was ratified, the standard pretty much went the way of the dinosaur. I'm talking about high voltage differential SCSI. If you got a high voltage differential SCSI card, I gotta make sure you can see me. If you get a high voltage differential SCSI card, you will not be able to use it directly with low voltage differential SCSI hardware. There are converters for that, but if you're going to go through all that aggravation, unless you have a lot of legacy hardware that's high voltage differential, it would be just makes sense to go with low voltage differential from the beginning, or single-ended. Single-ended SCSI, of course, and low voltage differential are compatible with each other. Low voltage differential devices will work in single-ended mode when attached to a single-ended host adapter, and likewise, single-ended devices will work on low voltage differential / single-ended host adapters that support backwards compatibility. It's specified under the current SCSI standards, which are set up, I believe it's by the International Telecommunication Union now. Originally it was under CCIT. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the external connectors, and also they explain interoperability, and also, of course, I mentioned termination. So we're going to briefly, I'm going to use the phone like I did before, just so we can just make this easy. It's very hard to hold the phone up and talk while showing you cables. So I have to be able to see the frame. So I have some cables here, which, if you can bear with me here. The first one here is, we're going to start with, I mentioned the Centronics 50. I got a Centronics 50 right here. It has an active terminator, pass-through terminator on the end here. This is compatible with modern SCSI cards as the active terminator. Please don't use a passive terminator on a modern card. You will find it'll make you cry. Okay, just because they're separate mountain for active termination. Another connector I mentioned, the Centronics, are the SCSI 2 and SCSI 2 Fast connector. That's it right here. There's a 50 pin. This has a clamp, Zoidberg would say, "You have nice squeezers." It has squeezers that allow it to lock in place. You squeeze it, and then it locks in place. That is a narrow SCSI. That is 8-bit SCSI. The last one here I have actual connector of is the current standard half pitch 68 pin wide connector. Okay, I don't know if you can see here very well, but let's see if we can do it. There we go. This is very small, got very tiny pins, and just like it looks like a DB25 connector. In fact, it has a lot in common with the DB25 connector in the sense it's got a D shell to it, and it's got 68 pins and a half pitch, which means that these cables are got very small pins on them. The last one I don't have a connector for, but is also is a very modern connector. I'll just have to show you on this card here because this says it. It's called VHDCI. Now, these are very high density connection interface. That's what it stands for, VHDCI. Very, very small. It's got some screws. But if you look at the size of this connector versus the size of this connector here, just put them so you can see the side of them here, you'll notice that this connector is much bigger than that one, and it's wider and it's longer. Okay, there are adapters to connect this to that, but they're not exactly the cheapest game in town. So if you get into the SCSI cards, you start getting into conversion, you're going to start to into what I call the Tower SCSI Babel, which is, okay, for example, I have these 3 cables here taped together only because for the demonstration it made it simple. But let me explain the reality here. All of these cables here go to the Apple SCSI DB25 connectors here. They all have 3 cables, are all the same DB25. So instead of actually trying to repeat and get another 4th cable to show you for demonstration, I just looped over. These are all, by the way, these are all Mac SCSI, Apple SCSI connectors. These are not Future Domain DB25 connectors. Future Domain is its own proprietary format. It's got a DB25 like this, but the wiring's different. So maybe somebody can create a Future Domain to Apple Mac SCSI, but don't count on it. Okay, so now we see the different connectors, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook this hardware up. I'm gonna see if I can get it to work, and I'm gonna show you some actual demonstration with the scanner. So, but I don't know how much of that I'm gonna get into this video, so I probably won't. But the nice thing about SCSI is that it allows you to mix. It's an open bus in a sense. It's a standard bus. It stands for Small Computer System Interface. It's ironic that what was originally designed for small computers are now used in the variations with large server networks. I'm going to just briefly explain what I do with that. It's called Serial Attached SCSI, SAS. SAS is a very different situation than parallel SCSI. It's got a different plug. It uses a hub type topology, nodes and hubs, and it's really kind of weird. It doesn't really interface quite the same as with this SCSI here. It is SATA devices can be used on SAS. So that's one of the reasons why SAS is being used more and more for servers. It's because it is compatible with serial attached ATA devices. So SATA devices can be connected directly to a SATA cable and be integrated into your network. It uses a node and hub topology, so just like SATA does. So you can actually don't have to worry about setting device IDs and all that. SCSI, I do not mention this. I might as well mention it now. Let's talk about the actual implementation of it. SCSI 8-bit sports devices from 0 to 7. The hosted adapter almost always is 7, so that means you really can get 7 devices from 0 to 6. Logical unit numbers are from 0 to 7, so you can technically have 56 devices on a SCSI cable. If each one had a logical unit number, say for example you had 6 or 8 CD-ROMs in a CD-ROM tower, and each one the tower has to say SCSI ID of 1, and each one has a logical unit number from 0 to 7. You could technically imagine what you could do with 56 CD-ROM drives. You probably might laugh your head off at the possibility, but I can tell you right now, it does have its value. My days now, the logical unit numbers are sometimes used with RAID. Unfortunately, I don't have any RAID adapters here to demonstrate that, but if you want to get a logical unit numbers used, Bernoulli's 44 megabyte Bernoulli's have a master and slave drive. The slave drive is LUN 1, the master is LUN 0, and you can actually, if you feel cocky enough, you probably can get more devices and connect them through as LUN 2 and through 7. So that's a pretty cool thing about this RAID business. On SCSI wide, okay, your SCSI IDs, this gets funny because they get to be backwards compatible with SCSI Nero here. You can have devices, a maximum number of devices is 14 because SCSI ID 7 and SCSI ID 15 is dedicated for the hosted adapter. Okay, so it means you can have 0 through 6 and 8 through 14. And while you may be able to turn off support for SCSI ID 7, I wouldn't. Because you never know. You might one day forget you did that, and then you find out nothing works anymore. When you plug in a narrow device into a wide host adapter. Terminators are probably the one thing about SCSI that has given more SCSI enthusiasts hell on wheels than you can imagine. So let's just talk about termination. Like I said before, I'm trying to hold the phone here. SCSI is a bus topology. Okay, now I told you can have a SCSI card on the end of the cable, which is where it's often used. If you've got an internal SCSI card, and you have the matching cable end connected to your SCSI appliance. For example, this wide 68-pin cable, you may need to deal with termination, especially if it's going to a narrow SCSI connector. It is iron on the other end. What happens is the standard SCSI terminator, like this one, is going to provide what we call 8-bit narrow termination, okay? But that does nothing for the high bits, okay? And the high bits in some cables are left disconnected. So in this case, you really should be using a high byte termination, which I don't have. Any of these cables don't have it. I'm thinking about buying a high byte terminator if this cables don't work. We'll find out. Okay. The high byte terminator, it provides the proper termination to use SCSI. Also, the other thing to it, SCSI, is length of the cables. Low voltage differential SCSI can have cables of about maybe 3 or 4 meters. High voltage differential SCSI could have cables as long as 25 meters. Not that I think you're going to need a 25 meter long cable, but you never know. Some people just like to do it just for the hell of it, Termination is, like I said, is the name of the game. So the Terminators, the better. The now, so let's not with a little lump of the tongue wagging. Let's get this thing hooked up, shall we? So when I come back, we will. I'm going to test the scanner first, and then we will demonstrate it to you here at the thing. But right now I'm waiting for another thing to get done too. I'm going to see if that's done downloading first before I interrupt the computer, because I have to power the computer down to connect up the card. Well, and I also briefly talk about something else here at the same time. All I said, all my Macs have a SCSI card. All of them do. From my old Pizza Box 6115 CD, which I'm in the process of restoring, that uses this SCSI connector, okay, and to my PowerMac G3, which has two SCSI cards in it. One's using this connector to go to this for 8-bit SCSI for the scanner, and it's using this 68-pin half pitch to go for the external driver race. So therefore, and we're going to be doing the same thing with the PowerMac G5 as well, so that the PowerMac G5 can use all the same goodies that the PowerMac G3 can. One nice thing about SCSI is you can have every piece of hardware can be interfaced in with every other piece of hardware. Okay? I remember a couple years ago, Granite Computer had a joke showing hippie-like VW bus, showing flowers around the headlights instead of saying peace in the side, and they're trying to, I guess in some ways just trying to let you know that yes, SCSI can be the happy medium. Unfortunately, a lot of early SCSI implementers came up with some really strange solutions, which do unfortunately still persist in legacy hardware today. I mentioned in the last video about the equivalent of SCSI's ID, SCSI's plug and play, device information, which is sent out during a SCSI bus scan to devices, that then report back to the system what the devices are. There were some early SCSI cards and SCSI accessories that did not respond to that request, and so the bus would be sitting there twiddling his fingers going, oh, wait a minute, when is he going to get back to me about what he's got? Lock up the whole bus solid. It's not really locking it up, it's just a matter of the things waiting for the device to respond to their information, which it doesn't know how to respond to it. An example of this was the Adaptec ACB 5000 or 4000 bridge board. The 4000 bridge board is an MFM to SCSI Narrow bridge board that allowed the connection of old ST506 411 hard drives to the SCSI bus. The problem is that when I got this device identification, it didn't know what to do with it. It just simply ignored it. It did nothing for the whole setup there, which is waiting for a response. So, in some cases, the card firmware may or may not be able to directly move on after that, because if the firmware is not aware of what to do with old, ancient, crufty dinosaurs like that, you have to come up with a whole new way of thinking outside the box. Now, when I was working on ACB 4000, when I was living in Cary Hill Alley in Willimantic, one of the things I had to come up with was I had to find a way to fudge the scan by hard coding the information into the Linux scanning of the driver. It was a kludge, it was buggy, and it really, really limited my efficiency of my device, because now I had to basically come up with some bogus stuff to make it work. And it was hard coded, so it was really kind of a lousy choice, but it worked, okay? I don't recommend you do it, but if you have to, well, you got to. The ACB 4070, however, did support that in the so if you're gonna go with the ACB, if you really want to use the older ST506 411 devices on a SCSI cable, please make sure to try to find yourself an Adaptec ACB 4070 because that supports that command. Plus, it also supports RLL, so it's a plus too. By the way, ACARD, that's ACARD, does make a couple of interesting bridge boards that may be of use to you for some applications, but I'm going to warn you, they're going to cost you. The first one allows you to connect ATA, IDE hard drives, we're talking about parallel port ones, into a SCSI bus. The problem with this is the card's like almost $159. Okay? Really, really pricey. They provide outputs for SCSI Narrow, SCSI Wide, low voltage differential, and I don't think they support high voltage differential SCSI, but you never know. They might have one, maybe in a legacy department. They also have the same technology to connect SATA devices to standard parallel SCSI hosted adapters, again, the same way, wide, narrow, and low voltage differential wide. Okay, so good point. All this technology allows you to use modern IDE and SATA devices, and why not? Maybe even FireWire devices on the SCSI port. I don't know about FireWire, but I do know that there were several boards many years ago that were designed to allow a single SCSI device to work on a FireWire 400. I forgot who makes it now, but unfortunately, it is no longer made. And if you happen to need such a thing, you could probably find one on eBay. But get ready to pay for the card. It's expensive. And I think it's a RATOC, RATOC, RATOC card. It's a really neat little thing, but it's really a very specialized application. For that amount of money, if you got PCIe or PCI slots in your computer, just get yourself a SCSI host adapter and save yourself a lot of aggravation. Okay, it really isn't too hard to get. You can get secondhand SCSI cards fairly cheap. I want you to stay connected, and don't forget, coming up, we're gonna get these videos in as fast as we can because once November, actually September, in November we'll be October we're going to focus on hardware. In November we're going to be starting to focus on winter weather. After all, I am the North American Snow Queen, and that is what I do for a living. Okay? See you later. Bye.